Good morning. It's Glenn with War from the West back at you today with a bit of a think piece. Folks, there's a lot of discussion from my MAGA friends about what Trump should be doing once he gets in office from a national security standpoint. By the way, I got this from my girlfriend, but I ended up loving the mug. It's so thick and it has this good weight in the hand. So I'm normally not a Hello Kitty guy, but it was the mug that fell into my hand this morning, and I do love the weight of it. I didn't realize I had the Hello Kitty mug. So hello there. So there's a lot of concern that he's appointing Mike Waltz and Marco Rubio and some other people who actually have, kind of support this liberal international empire. And remember, that's what we need to discuss. Not any particular nation, but what is the U.S.'s role in the world? We have already become the guarantor of this thing called the liberal international order. So the first point I want to make to my MAGA friends is this. Trump cannot come into office and just ignore everything that we're already involved in. Yeah? The world is a huge a huge mess, and it's, by the way, not our fault. It's not anybody's fault. The world is a mess, and it always has been a mess, and it will always be a mess. But what do I mean by that? There will always be conflict, nations warring each other, peoples warring each other, large groups of people who don't want to work it out and make peace, and hence that's how you end up in war eventually. There's conflicts, large and small, going on all the time. And Trump comes into office into a very, very complex set of conflicts that we're already invested in. So what I figured I would do for my friends on the right and my fellow MAGA people is just a little data, fact-driven review. By the way, this camera's kind of angle is driving me crazy right now, so I'm just gonna shift a little bit here. I'm very sorry. Okay, good. Now I'm sensitive. Of course, I always move the wrong way because the mirror effect, blah, blah, blah. All right, now it's better. It's not going to bother me the whole time. More Hello Kitty coffee. Okay, so let's take a look at what I am trying to talk about here. Yeah? What is going on in the world? So I thought what I would do is start with just a list of the hot conflict zones in the world right now. And I thought that might be a useful way for us to get an idea of what actually Trump is walking into. So let's talk about the world. Let's talk. And what I love about this conflict zone tracker is that it allows me to have these little pop-ups, right? I think if I make this a little bigger, it'll be better for everybody. So let me see how big I can make this. Okay, good. So as we move around the world, right? So we've got, by the way, this is a fantastic website called. It's from the Center for Foreign Relations. People you are told are the enemies of the universe. I'm not getting into that today. They just publish a really good interactive map about conflict zones in the world. So look at what we face. We have basically the cartels running Mexico. Think about that. They call it criminal violence, but you essentially have a narco-terror state in Mexico. I mean, the current president, who's, by the way, not controlled by the cartels. I see people on MAGA saying, oh, she's just a cartel tool. You don't know what you're talking about. She ran against the cartel tool who was really a cartel tool, got rid of him, and she's always run against the cartels and is not a corrupt person. She doesn't live a lifestyle that would indicate she's corrupt in any way. Politics aren't that way. Doesn't mean she's a good person. She's a hardcore leftist. And what she's done is she's actually made a peace deal with the narco-terrorists, with the cartels, in order to sort of work incrementally against them but not have open warfare. And that might be a smart strategy, but it's an acknowledgement that they've already lost. Huge problem. And it's not just about immigration. There's tons of problems. It's not just about drugs. Tons of issues. Part of the problem here is that one of the things I've found out recently is that the cartels are being aided by Chinese now, and some of them can actually get Chinese to provide them satellite intelligence, what we call ISR, for the good guys on the side. So think about how screwed up and how large the cartels are. By the way, the cartels are made up of, they've got 175,000 fighting men under all the Sinaloa and the new generation, whatever the hell they call themselves, Jalisco or something like that. There's two big ones. 175,000 fighters, well armed. They have armor. They have not just machine guns, but they have light weapons and like rocket launchers and other very very aggressive armored vehicle capabilities and whatnot. They are like an army. Many of them have been trained in the Mexican military, Mexican Marines particularly. That is not just Mexico. There's also instability in what they call the Northern Triangle here. And people say it's so. This is interesting. This says significant impact. Let's see what they mean by significant impact here. More than 2 million people have left PDF. So here's what they're talking about. This conflict zone, what it does is it makes people leave that area, right? So this is in Guatemala, et cetera, this whole area in the central triangle. So what they're talking about is that's conflict for us. I like this because it helps you think about it. Haiti impact is significant because of the immigration it's forcing into the country. It's interesting. Here is the Venezuelan crisis that's ongoing. It's interesting, of limited sort of importance to us. But it's interesting, right? Like, if you look at the world and you see the conflict zones just in our hemisphere, you've got really four major problems. You've got Haiti, what's going on in these triangle countries. You've got Mexico, and you've got here. This is just actual conflict going on where people are shooting each other, or there's massive social collapse and disruption going on, right? And doing both those things. But look at the rest of the world. We've got this problem in this is Libya, the failed state in Libya. We've got in the Sahel, which is essentially large desert areas of conflict. Central African Republic. But look at this. These are all of limited impact to us. All of limited impact to us, right? Like the conflict in Ethiopia, Sudan. Somalia should still be here because Somalia is a perpetual mess, right? And look at there's, Yemen is going crazy. Of course, have the Israeli war. But, when we talk about the Middle East, lots of Americans just think that there is a war with Israel going on. Hezbollah invaded Lebanon and is a long time ago and has been funded by Iran. And there's an ongoing stalemate in Lebanon. It's not exactly a functioning state. There's supposedly a government, but it's dealing with militant organizations underneath. That's a problem that's separate from Israel. People say it's part of the Israeli conflict. It's not. It's a separate issue of conflict with Christians and other sects of Islam or Islam derivatives and the Iranians who are backing Hezbollah in that area, right? You've got problems in Iraq still. We've got problems in, there's people shooting each other in Nagorno-Karabakh. You don't even know that, right? We're still in Iran, right? Oh, we got Ukraine up here, of course, right? There's conflict going on in Afghanistan still, right? There's instability in Pakistan, right? We're not going to analyze all these things. I'm just trying to say when President Trump wakes up in the morning on January 21st, these are the conflict zones, the hot areas of the world that are problematic right now. Ongoing problems in Burma, by the way. If you map this, there's a significant amount of conflict in the world that's driven by Muslim jihadi forces, by the way. And they don't often in the news, they're not honest about that. Of course, we've got China trying to take over the South China Sea, right? We've got all kinds of disputes and problems all over the world. So I didn't really want to get into the details. I just want to, the world is a messy place, lots of conflicts. Now, here's the interesting thing that we can start doing. Let's look at where U.S. troops are. And this is not a very friendly place. It's called World Beyond War. It's a critical site, but they collect data from open source intelligence very smartly. And I want to contrast this. So this is basically where we have troops operating somehow in the world right now. Okay? We've got some military people based there doing something. They're not all fighting and killing people, but look at this. So you saw that sign of conflict. First of all, wow, we've got troops in a lot of places where the CFR hasn't identified them as conflict zones. Just interesting, right? But let's not focus on that too much. But look at where we have troops, man. We are everywhere in the world already. So you think Trump can just come in and ignore all these conflicts? We're already involved and embedded in them in so many ways. In some places, we've caused them. Yeah? So the question is, what is he to do? Now, I want to point out another inconsistency here. So notice the difference between the CFR map of conflict and this map of conflict. Map of the conflict zones where troops are. Obviously, there's a lot of conflict zones where our troops are that aren't in this map. I think that tells you a bit of a story about how the CFR sees things. And then if you look here, you'll see that this is where we say troops are deployed currently. By this is sneaky language. Deployed means we're permanently basing you over there. A forward deployment where you're rotating back is not counted in there, right? So that's how they get away with a lot of this. But still, look, this is our official, base presence around the world, right? I mean, this is a huge, huge monster to manage. And then let's talk about NATO. What does he walk in the door with NATO? So first of all, here are the NATO. Here's the NATO countries as of sort of now what we've done, right? So NATO is comprised of all these Euro nations, and look what we've been doing. I mean, we have done this whole expansion of NATO radically, basically starting in 19 actually started in 1994 the conversations, and we really started adding people in. You can see this first tranche from 97 to 92, right? This is the crazy sort of expansion that the Clinton administration engaged in, that, by the way, our smartest diplomat, the architect of the Cold War, a guy named George Kennan, warned against and shrieked against in the 90s. And he's on record as saying the following: these people will cause Russia to attack us because of NATO expansion. And then the people who promoted this, who telling me I'm wrong and I'm crazy, will and say, Russia's not going to attack, they're not going to be provoked by this, will then say when Russia does act to stop NATO, they'll say that Russia was always going to invade Europe anyway and pretend that Europe was an imperial power, when at the time it did not have imperial ambitions. Yeah? So we are in Ukraine in a way that's horrible for us. But look what we're doing. You want to say we're not provoking people? Like, so these are the ones who joined from, 56. We brought, all these major nations into the fold, Spain and Turkey and all the rest. Like, what the? Now, Turkey, why Turkey's in the alliance is interesting. Turkey's in the alliance because they've always been an opponent, an enemy of the Russians. That's changing now over time. The Russians are building bridges with them. Isn't that interesting? We're bringing Turks into an alliance with us, and they're playing both sides against the middle. That's how the Islamists run, by the way. So what we've done is is expand the NATO alliance dramatically since 22, right? In Finland, dramatically since from 97 to 22, and then we've got 3 other nations, applying to join right now, and this is the kind of situation that Trump runs into when he gets in the door. Now NATO's gone crazy. I don't understand why NATO even exists anymore, because it's run amok. We've decided to create non-NATO major alliances that we kind of run together, beyond NATO. And these are major allies of ours, most of whom we don't have any ratified treaties with, by the way. Just executive agreements, executive orders, different memorandums we've signed and things like that, multilateral organizations we're part of. But I literally think they want to start attaching, making NATO a global alliance, so there's one central point of control for who gets in and gets out, because you can't really have Congress voting on each one of these things because they won't vote to bring the most in. So what NATO does is it's a trick. It allows NATO to add member states without the U.S. having to ratify. So, for example, we've just added Finland and Sweden. I would never go to war to protect Sweden or Finland. I don't care what happens to them. I'm Irish, by the way. The Russians could invade Ireland. I wouldn't go to war over it. I don't know why Americans think we should go to war. By the way, Europe has provoked Russia now. So as far as I'm concerned, by the way, Finland, okay, let me tell you the story of Finland. Finland had a very peaceful relationship with Russia. It's very close to St. Petersburg. People from Finland would cross the border and go party in St. Petersburg for the weekends. The border was not in any way heavily militarized, or controlled like a war border with an enemy you have. That's the evidence that they're lying to you about Russia, by the way. Russia did not have westward expansion plans. NATO provoked it to push back in Ukraine. And this started a long time ago, this problem. But Finland now has by becoming a NATO ally, has now militarized their border with Russia. So you see, this was all our provocation and Russia reacting. I'm sorry. But this is what Trump walks into. So here's what I want to say to you. I wasn't trying to give a geopolitical lesson like some academic over here, or lecture you like a professor. I just want to dip you into what's going on in the world a little bit, and what Trump walks into on day one. We are already committed to being the world's policeman. We're in the midst of it. You have to make a choice as to what we can do next. I don't think it's politically possible for us to exit these alliances and focus on our hemisphere, which is what I would like to do. If make me king for a day, I would withdraw all our troops from around the world. I would make Fortress Americana, make us unbeatable in terms of missile defense. I mean, we fix this like the hypersonic defense problem we have now is just because we have horrible people in the Defense Department managing things. Biden slowed down our hypersonic defense. We could have had our hypersonic defense done by now. Now it might be done by 29, but not so. So there's a certain. And when I say hypersonic defense, please don't read too much into that. I'm talking about a very narrow problem, and we can actually take out some hypersonic missiles already, and to some degree, we are not laid bare to them. But we do not have proper defense against them. And there's no reason, because we have best hypersonic technology in the world already. Like, there's no reason why countries like Iran, Russia or China would ever be ahead of us in hypersonic missile technology. The thought that that's possible, that we've allowed that to happen, is incredible incompetence from our military leadership. There's a long story about the INF treaty, and I don't want to get into all this. A bunch of malarkey at some level. I'm not malarkey. It's all true and important, but at the strategic level I'm talking about, it's not relevant, right? You need to understand what we've done and how we've gotten here, and that Trump is going to have to govern from that perspective. He is going to have to manage some of this liberal international order stuff. We've already baked it into the cake of our nation. There isn't political support to back out. So we're still stuck with this scope of operations. And one of the sad things that Trump has done that I really am frustrated him about, he talks very generally about this stuff, and he's the no war guy. I'm going to end all wars. We're in a state of war with much of the world already. Much of the anti-terrorism stuff we were doing in Africa, and by the way, when we look at this, what is it, this one? Hang on, Glenn. Oh, boy. All right, wrong window. Terrible production quality over here. I'll get you to the right window now. Okay. These are all like anti-terror operations that you're seeing, right? That's what's going on here. Oh, gosh, I moved the whole point. You get me on the mouse. I'm going to start making mistakes. Okay, so, look at this now. This is mostly anti-terror. Are we really going to pull out of all these countries at once? I mean, to some degree, we're there to fight the bad guys. I think the big question is this. Who are the bad guys? Who are we actually fighting? To me, it's not Russia. Russia could be co-opted into Europe, so we should tamp down that conflict. China, we spent 40 years building China into a pure superpower and de-recognize Taiwan and recognize it. After doing that, you want to go to war? No. The time to take out China as a power in Asia was 45 years ago. Our political leadership were gutless and decided not to do that, and they played globalist. Nixon was the most cowardly of all, by the way. I love Nixon in some ways, but he's given credit for opening to China, and him and that war criminal lowlife Kissinger. And yes, Henry Kissinger is not was not an asset for U.S. nationalism. He was an asset for post-nationalism and globalism, right? And he very much wanted to run the world, right? But at some level, we've got to decide who our actual enemies are. To me, it's very clear who our enemies are. Islam. Islam has declared war on us. Islam does a massive amount of. Maybe I'll do something here real quick. I'll show you what Islam does that there is nothing like. I have a site here. Here we go. Let's go back over to it. And what you get is a record of Islamic attacks. So I'm just going to, this is how many people have been killed in the past week by jihadi attacks over here. See, 205 killed, 27 attacks, 311. Now, they're largely concentrated in places where we'd expect them to be, right? But, let's just keep going, it's in the Congo, Syria, India, Israel, UAE. This is not just happening, and let's go less 30 days here. I'll just take the list the past 30 days here. Algeria, Gaza. I mean, of course, a lot of this is happening in the Middle East, but a lot of it's happening elsewhere as well, right? So Islamic terrorism is a huge, huge threat, and it's aimed at other Muslims as well. So by taking out the crazy jihadis, we might actually be able to win something in the Islamic world eventually. But so to me, the first thing to do is to decide who our enemies are. And I'm pretty clear Trump doesn't like being that black and white about things. I don't think we should make China an enemy now. They're a peer competitor. Saving Taiwan would be the bloodiest war you can imagine. Do you want to lose 3 aircraft carriers and 50,000 men? Do you want to see hundreds of our aircraft shot down? It would be a game of vicious naval and air warfare attrition. We could eventually beat them if we wanted to. It would be horrendous. God knows what would be left of Taiwan or the Taiwanese people after we did it. There would be killing. Casualty estimates are so hard, but like if 1 million people got killed, that wouldn't surprise me in that war. That's a very serious problem. A lot of people don't like me hearing saying that. And then they talk about Taiwan semiconductor and why we for semiconductors. Dude, we're already building 5 foundries in the United States. We already have 39 semiconductor foundries in the United States. We are not capable of building semiconductors. We don't have the will to do it. The political will has changed. We subsidize some of it. TSCC is building 2 foundries right now. We can double down on that. And if we need to build a foundry really fast, we can just call up Elon Musk and say, they say this takes 5 years. Can you do it in a year? Musk built a foundry recently. Musk can build a foundry in a year. So worst case, if there's some dislocation, some prices go up, some computer equipment isn't available, oh well. All that's going to do is make us produce it and not be reliant on China anymore. So to me, letting China take Taiwan is probably what has to happen. Because I don't think Taiwanese lives are worth sending one American boy to die over. Do you? Where did you get the crazy idea that an American life was worth losing over saving Taiwan? Certainly our government is not empowered to believe that kind of crazy nonsense, right? So let's figure out who the enemy is. The enemy is Islam. China wants to be the regional hegemon of Asia. They want global hegemony. They'll get it if we don't stop mismanaging our own nation. See, if we focused on our economy and being much more self-sufficient, building good trading relationships in our hemisphere, and by the way, in our hemisphere, we're going to have to listen, no Russia, no China, and we should take the Panama Canal back. Just take it. China has a base in Tierra del Fuego. We should just either tell them to leave or destroy it. We should say, in our hemisphere, no Russian military, no Iranian military, no Chinese military, and then we should deal with these corrupt nations. And I'm not against us using our power. I want to use it for good. Let's get rid of the commie lowlifes who've destroyed Venezuela. Yeah, let's really stand up against the commies in Brazil, whereas the Biden administration empowered the commies in Brazil. The commies around the world doing subversion are our enemies. They're not, China funds some of them, but they're nascent. They are part of our society now. Let's fight commies. Let's fight Islam. Let's focus on our hemisphere. I would love to see 10 years from now that there's all these foreign influences, China, everything are out of the southern hemisphere, and we've got massive trading relationships. Democracy has exploded, following the examples of what's going on in Argentina with Milei, or what the law and order of El Salvador, or many other nations that are trying to do this the right way. That's what a sound foreign policy would do. And we tell Europe, we're gonna move out of NATO. You can keep NATO. It's just not gonna have the United States in it. And they're rich. They have a $28 trillion GDP all over Europe. I mean, it's about the same as us on a PPP basis. On just a pure GDP currency conversion basis, they're a little smaller than us. They've stagnated, by the way. They don't have growth. They've totally screwed themselves up economically. Like, we used to be the same size 20 years ago, and just because we have more growth and they don't, we're now 30% larger than the European economy in many ways. Measuring is tricky because you got all these currency things. You got to be careful about how you do. That's why they use the PPP measurement. Point being here is, Trump's got to elucidate a clear strategy and a rationale for it and who our enemies actually are. And I'm sorry, I haven't heard him do that as clearly as I'd like. I know he's willing to use force and power and to assert ourselves, and I love all that. I'm just not sure the why and when of it. And until he makes a clear policy and a clear plan of how we're going to step out of it, we're stuck running the liberal international order. He's stuck doing it. You understand that, right? He's got to give a clear strategy and do the politics to work our way away from that via changes in law, treaties, deployments, all this stuff. Massive. Do you know how many international things we'd have to back out of if we backed out of the war? Like, there is so much there already. And I don't hear a big strategy, a clear strategy for who are our enemies, who we're going to protect ourselves against, where we're going to focus our energies. I don't see it. And I think, Trump is going to still promote the liberal international order to a significant degree. And I think that's hugely problematic because as an empire, it corrupts us. You can't be an empire and be a virtuous nation. They're incompatible. The blood we spatter ourselves with by being an empire corrupts us utterly. And that makes me sad. It's not what I signed up. It's not what I thought being an American meant. Turns out I was very wrong about what it means to be an American. I was the one who had a line. I was the one who didn't understand reality, right? And so now I'm really, really hoping Trump changes it. But this is a very big, serious problem to address, and I'm not sure we're at all set up to do so in a way that makes sense right now. Okay, thanks, Glenn, with War from the West out. I hope this is helpful. I don't know when I do these kind of things if they get over and they land the way I'd like them to. So if any feedback would be hugely appreciated. Okay, Glenn, with War from the West out. Have a great day.